We have been absolutely blessed in the past few years by Mappa with one amazing show after another. But what is the Mappa Effect? For us to understand fully what the effect is and how it works, we need to go back to the very beginning. It all goes back to exactly 14th of June 2011. On this very day, Studio Mappa was founded by the one and only Masai Maruyama. Masai is a pretty big dog in the industry. He's also a co-founder and a former producer of another massive studio named Madhouse, which was all founded all the way back in 1972. In total, he created 3 studios, making him very successful. He created Mappa so he could have a more laid-back workplace environment, compared to Madhouse, which was already very successful and in turn created a stressful environment with high expectations. It also gave him a chance to work on projects that he actually wanted to work on. It was Masai's passion project in a way. The name Mappa actually stands for Maruyama Animation Produced Project Association.
But what the hell?
I first heard of Mappa when they took over for the final season of Attack on Titan from Wit Studio, which is probably when most of you first heard of them. We should probably be very grateful for them taking over animating the show, as no other studio was willing to take on such a massive project. If it wasn't for them, I doubt we would have even gotten the last season, but you never really know these things. As you know, things did come up. Some people complained about the style change, some complained about how the scenes looked much more desaturated than previous seasons.
No, dude!
Small problems that most people could overlook. Me personally, I nearly didn't even realise the change between seasons, as I was binging it one after another, just fascinated by the plot twists and on the edge of my seat. Of course, Attack on Titan isn't the first anime they worked on. The first one was in fact a movie named In This Corner of the World. It wasn't a usual anime movie you'd expect. It was about a young girl who's married off to a man she barely knows, as she's struggling to get used to living in Hiroshima during World War II, right before the bombs were dropped. I don't want to say anything more, as the movie itself covers some interesting topics from compassion to perseverance and how it portrayed war from a different and lesser seen perspective, that of everyday people. Most of you would find it an interesting watch to say the least. Of course, things did come up and there was delays, but eventually 5 years later they finally released it. And it ended up gathering up to 10 wins and 11 nominations, so I guess you could say that it did end up doing pretty well. Masai Maruyama set up Mappa in the first place to escape the corporate pressures and restrictions he had been experiencing at Madhouse. This was the case at first, but very quickly the company brought in success, which attracted more productions, increased the workload, and meant the company needed to grow. You could say that Mappa became the very thing it swore to destroy. In 2016, Maruyama decided that he wanted to step away from Mappa. He was 75 years old at this point and straight up suffering from success. All he wanted to do after all is to work on his passion projects and be more stress-free. He formed another company called Studio M2, so he could still work on projects closer to his heart in a more relaxed manner. He decided to hand over the control of Mappa to Manabu Otsuka, who's still the CEO up to now. From that point on, Mappa would only become more and more successful, with taking already great manga and creating anime adaptations of them, which in fact were very well animated. Since then up to now, they took on plenty of projects, from Kids on the Slope, Terror and Resonance, and many other names. The very first project from Mappa that saw insane success was Yuri on Ice. This anime wasn't just a success in Japan, but it also caught the eyes of many people around the globe. The show follows the story of a figure skater named Yuri, who loses a competition and falls in love with his coach. It's a pretty zesty show, but clearly made for the female audience. The show went on to win a bunch of awards and became the most successful media franchise in Japan in 2017. Around this time, reports started to come up that the working conditions in the studio during the production of the series were far from great. With very tight deadlines and things getting quite messy, these rumours would continue to pop up in the near future. They then released Banana Fish in 2018, which would only solidify Mappa's name in the industry. The show itself had zesty undertones once again.
Come over here and kiss me on my hot mouth. I'm feeling romantical.
But the main themes and highlighted issues were drug use, gangs, murders, and pedophilia. Topics you rarely see in any media, and of course because of this, the show went on to see great success. I would personally recommend it as it covers very serious topics, and because of that, it's a much more interesting watch from your everyday shonen anime.
We're gonna hang out, watch a movie,
Hey yo, what the
take
fuck?
some pictures.
Shortly after this, Mappa really got the gears turning, and started the streak of taking on many great well-known mangas and throwing them into the stratosphere. And not only in Japan, but everywhere, turning these animangas into basically household names around the globe, which is what I call the Mappa Effect. The first manga they did it with was Dorohedoro. This manga on its own was already well known in Japan, but of course, as the Mappa Effect goes, When the trailer for Season 1 released in January 2021, it spiked everyone's interest worldwide. Then when it actually dropped, it skyrocketed even higher. Since then, it's tripled in popularity and hasn't dipped. Of course, this was just the start. They did the exact same thing with Jujutsu Kaisen. It was already very popular in Japan, but when Mappa announced Season 1, it blew it out of the water globally and managed to stay relevant since then, even with the breaks between seasons in the movie. Both Dorohedoro and Jujutsu Kaisen release dates are 9 months apart. It might not seem like much, but keep in mind they worked on both of these shows at once, and not to mention a third one, which is actually a pretty small anime you probably haven't heard of, and is pretty underground, called Attack on Titan. It goes the same for this show. Of course, it's already had the steam that Wit Studio brought with it, but as you can see, Wit Studio just doesn't have the same effect, unlike Mappa. This spike right here is where Mappa dropped the beginning of Season 4. Of course, it's not all Mappa's work. The source material is absolute peak, but Mappa's work only amplifies the show to a whole new level. As goes for all the other manga they picked up. Then over a year later, they came to drop Chainsaw Man. Of course, it surged in popularity as they teased the first trailer, but the pattern continued. We all know a manga being animated will bring attention to it, but it's almost never as big of a jump in popularity when Mappa does it. Right after Chainsaw Man at the start of October 2022, they didn't waste any time with Season 2 of Vinland Saga, releasing it at the very start of January 2023. Vinland Saga already had previous hype just like Attack on Titan, but as history goes, it didn't amount to the Mappa effect. This brings us to now, and Mappa's most recent release has been Hell's Paradise. As always, the Mappa effect worked like a charm, and honestly, this show had the biggest increase I've ever seen out of all the shows. Although it's not all sunshine and rainbows, it's common knowledge that the workspace in Japan isn't the healthiest to say the least. I'm sure you guys seen photos of businessmen in Japan just passed out on the streets from drinking all night. This is a result not only from the complete stress they undergo day in and out, but also Japan's networking culture. In their world, the more you drink, the more trustworthy you are considered, which of course leads to these types of photos popping up pretty frequently. Jokes aside though, it is a very serious problem, and of course includes the animators as well, where they're overworked and sometimes even underpaid for their work. During last year and coming into this year, rumours started to pop up that Mappa is crunching their employees. They released Chainsaw Man Season 1, Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen, Vinland Saga Season 2, and Hell's Paradise Season 1, all in the span of 10 months. That's 29 hours of great quality anime released in that time frame. And that's not counting the last episodes of Attack on Titan, which are set to release sometime in October this year. And it being official that they're working on One Punch Man Season 3, which hasn't got a release date just yet. So yeah, it might just be that they're being overworked.
Help! Help! Help me! Help!
But nothing official has been released at the moment. Either way, I hope the best for our dear Mappa animators. As you can see, the Mappa effect is very much real, and will probably continue to affect shows for the better or for worse as Mappa continues to animate them. They truly have been dominating the anime industry recently, and it doesn't seem like it's stopping anytime soon either. Thanks for making it this far, and if you had a good time, hit that like, it helps me a lot, and I will see you in the next one.